There's all these things that happen when you clone a production that have little to nothing to do with your style as an artist. When I came away from that, the next song and songs that I did sounded nothing like the Beatles. My production sounded nothing like the Beatles. It didn't have anything to do with that. It had to do with all of the lessons of musicality and the production trickery and the weird arrangement choices and the strange mixing choices. All of this stuff came into play. I learned so much. Welcome to Kush After Hours. My name's Gregory Scott. Tonight I want to do a quick one and just hit you up with creativity and originality. A lot of you out there, like me, are artists trying to find your way, find your own sound, trying to make it, easier to express yourself. And you know me, I'm a bit of a fan of the Zen paradox, the koan, if you will, the sound of one hand clapping, the things that can't exist at the same time. Ironically, one of the ways that I really got in touch with how to express myself with true authenticity and originality was by copying artists that I love. And when I say copying, I mean copying, cloning, actually. I've done some cover songs in my life, and generally my approach to cover songs has been to make this thing as different as possible from the original. What I'm talking about tonight is cloning a work of art, in this case a song. And the first time that I did this, I did it with a Beatles song for my father, who at the time was 60. He was up there a bit, and he was not in any way, shape, or form a musician, but he, for his 40th wedding anniversary with my mother, wanted to give her a gift of him singing their song, which was Something by the Beatles. He asked me to help him with it, and I was like, oh, sure, I can do that, because I wanted to do that. I had no idea how I was going to do that. And so I set about recreating a Beatles song. And, of all the artists to try to recreate, this is definitely an interesting one to undertake, especially because I was not in any way, shape, or form a Beatles fan at the time. Didn't really know much of their music other than a few of their most popular songs. And I got to it, and I started with the drums. I went over to a friend's house who had a garage and an old Ludwig kit. And we sat there and we studied the recording. And then we set up a bunch of microphones over the drum kit, and we kept drilling it down to, okay, let's use this, let's use that combination, this microphone here, that microphone there. And we discovered that the Coles 4038 microphone over the drum kit, one of them, it had that flavor. That was kind of it. But in the process of doing that, what I really learned was that it was the tuning of the drums and the way that I played them that was far and away the most important thing. You could swap out microphones, you could play around with mic positions, but the way we tuned the kit and the way that I played them as I studied Ringo in the headphones and I'm tippity-tappity and playing back and listening and everything, I had to embody Ringo. I had to kind of get his feel, and he's got this weird thing when he does drum fills where he just sort of goes a little bit slower and the swing gets wider, the swing of the groove, which I think also corresponds to the swing of his arms. He was a left-handed drummer and playing a right-handed kit, so things got lopsided for him when he did drum fills. The point of all this was that with the drums, I got that my first lesson of, my God, the tuning of the drum kit and the way that I play it, far and away, was how to cop the vibe. It didn't sound exactly like the recording. I think that's possible. It was recorded at Abbey Road Studios on old tape machines, old preamps and everything. We didn't have that stuff. But man, we got really close. We got the vibe of it down pat with that one mono ribbon microphone over the kit and me just playing it the right way. When I say the right way, I mean the most authentically like Ringo. Hitting the drum the right amount of force, the right balance between the kick and the snare. And this is what I'm talking about when I say cloning the song. I then went through and I did that with every instrument. With the bass, I had a hollow body bass. That was the right thing. I had to play it with my thumb to get that sort of sound that Paul McCartney had on that song. It was a thumpy sound. Had to roll off all of the deep bass because there just was none on the recording. Learned a lot about production. Learned a lot about bass tone. The learning experience was extraordinary. In recreating the song, I would hear elements that I never heard before because okay, I think this is kind of it. Let me see how this is coming along. And then I'd be like, wait, something's not right here. Something's missing. It's a sound. What is that sound? I had to figure out what these sounds were in the recording. And then, okay, well, how do I recreate that with the tools that I have? You get really creative about that kind of approach to problem solving. So there's There's all these things that happen when you clone a production that have little to nothing to do with your style as an artist. Like that influence, that effect will happen. But really, it's just all of these creative obstacles and hurdles that in some way, shape, or form the original artist was probably dealing with in the studio. And then you have to confront your own version of those in the recreating of the music as well. There's a string section in that song. So I bought my first string VI. At the time, it was 2004, I think. Computers were not really up to the task of running VIs very well at that point in time. So I did a lot of printing and a lot of bouncing. I learned a lot about string arrangement. It's a pretty simple arrangement, but nevertheless, when you don't know anything, I didn't know music theory. I knew how to play the drums and passably strum some chords on guitar. So this was an exercise. I had to get a ringer guitarist in, a friend of a friend who worked at a cafe, that I was just like, do you know anybody who plays guitar? And he's like, yeah, actually, my friend. He came over, we got rip and baked, and we sat there and we tried to figure out, how do we recreate this guitar sound? There was effects on the guitar. I didn't even know what they were. And I identified one of them accurately, which is a bit of a slapback echo, but there was another one on there that I later learned was a Leslie on the guitar. I didn't know that sound. I didn't know how to recreate that sound. My version of the song doesn't have that. So I failed on that front. I failed on quite a few fronts. I missed the harmony in the last verse, things like that. But I got a lot of the harmonies, and I didn't know anything about harmonies. I knew very little about harmony at the time. I learned a lot. So the point of all this rambling, and check out the description of this video if you want to listen to my version of the Beatles, and this was done by me 16 years ago, maybe 14 years ago. I don't know. Time doesn't matter anymore, right? The point is, I was maybe breaking into the intermediate stage of my engineering and production at that point in time. So I listen to that now. There's so much that I would do differently. There's so much that I would be able to do to get it more accurate. But the point is, this was a huge step for me creatively as an artist and as a producer. And when I came away from that, the next song and songs that I did sounded nothing like the Beatles. My production sounded nothing like the Beatles. It didn't have anything to do with that. It had to do with all of the lessons of musicality and the production trickery and the weird arrangement choices and the strange mixing choices. All of this stuff came into play. I learned so much. So I recommend this highly for you. It doesn't matter what style you're in, what you're up to, what kind of music you're about, the artists that inspire you or don't. If you've done a million covers in the past, that is not what I'm talking about here. Cloning a work of art. And if you were in art school, hopefully you weren't, but if you were, or if you know somebody, they know. If you've ever been to a museum, at some point, if you go to museums enough, you will see students sitting there with their sketchbooks copying the works of the masters. They understand. That's how you learn. You're going to be doing perspective in your drawings. It's not that you want to paint like Rembrandt or Caravaggio. You want to just understand the play of light and shadow and how to create that in yours. This is the same thing with music and production. Same thing with all art, really. So copying, cloning the works of art that you find inspiring. Trust me. You're going to have a good time doing it. It's also going to drive you insane, but you're going to learn so much. And if you do end up doing it, bless your soul, please post a link down here in the comments section. So enjoy the journey, enjoy the process. My name's Gregory Scott. This has been Kush After Hours. Talk to you soon.